It is now my pleasure to turn today's program over to John Hinman, Director, Learning and Performance Improvement. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zenyatta. And hello, everyone, and thank you for taking time out today for this discussion on our silver bullet to combat the skills gap challenge. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is John Hinman. I am the Director of Learning and Performance Improvement at Tooling U-SME. Special thanks to MSC for inviting me back for this second in a series of webinars we are conducting to assist you with your workforce development challenges. Over the past couple decades, I've had the opportunity to develop hundreds of worker development programs geared towards high performance while leveraging the latest technologies in adult learning. Today, we are going to be talking about the millennial generation and how manufacturing can apply best practices to meet specific characteristics of this group of workers, which will lead to retention and faster skills development. The millennials are those individuals born from 1980 to 1994. To build a strong development program, we need to understand our audience. This session is going to get us through the myths of this generation and look at how we can engage millennial workers and provide instant value based on their strengths. And why is it important that we need to get this right? We all know it's difficult to find skilled workers, especially in a manufacturing environment. We also know if the business does not have a skilled workforce, they will struggle to meet key performance metrics and the business will fall behind the market. Some folks like to use the phrase silver tsunami as they describe the ongoing retirements of long-tenured baby boomers. Now is a critical point in time where best practices in learning and development need to be put in place to maintain business competitiveness. The millennials are a group that we need to develop and retain to keep our businesses afloat. We are fortunate because they bring so many skills to the table that will advance our businesses like never before. However, we need to adapt and we need to break down the stereotypes to build a positive generational relationship. Let's start combating the stereotypes and replace them with reality. There is a difference between fact and fiction, and it is important to separate the two when discussing this generation of worker. Let's review some facts about the millennials first. The millennial generation is made up of 92 million people. This makes the millennials the largest generation in U.S. history. For comparison, the massive baby boomer generation had about 77 million people. What's more important, the millennials now make up nearly half of the current U.S. workforce. The average millennial owns 7.7 connected devices. As this first generation, they're the first generation to grow up with technologies such as the internet and mobile phones. This probably isn't too surprising. Not only does the average millennial own nearly 8 connected devices, but they use more than 3 of them on an average day. Furthermore, the average millennial spends 18 hours on their smartphone per week. As of 2016, 15% of 25 to 35-year-old millennials were still living in their parents' home. This is 5 percentage points higher than the share of Generation Xers who lived in their parents' home in 2000 when they were the same age, and nearly double the share of the baby boomers who lived in their home in 1964. 78% of millennials would rather spend money on a desirable experience than on a physical product that they want. In fact, despite the public perception about the death of retail, many businesses that sell experience-based products such as movie theaters and water parks and ski resorts are really doing quite well in the challenging retail environment. Now, Tooling U-SME put together a survey to see how manufacturers are currently connecting with millennials. Our survey results indicated that 78% of respondents say millennials are obviously an important part of their future, but less than 40% have a good understanding of this group. This is extremely important because we can't onboard and just throw people into the same job for the next 30 years like we've done before. We must adapt and leverage good practices to developing others. I've had many discussions with number of employers, and I hear the stories about how lazy and self-centered the millennials are. I challenge this and want to talk about the generations of the past. As you can see from these magazine covers on the screen, different generations might not be all that different. Decades apart, it was said that the baby boomers and the Gen Xers were self-centered, and we now can say the same thing about the millennials. I hold a number of workshops across the country, and we talk about the millennials, and oftentimes the challenges are not one of generational, but one of youth. It just so happens that the sheer volume of the youth entering the workforce without high skills is creating a pressure cooker situation in manufacturing. So the sooner we can get past the myths and lean on good practices, the more we can mutually benefit on our generational partnerships. It's now time to debunk some of the myths around millennials and get into the reality of things. Our first myth: the younger generation of millennials have no work ethic. This is not necessarily the negative it might seem at first. Millennial employees are dedicated to completing their task well. However, they have not been raised in a way that demands them to look around and see what needs to be done next. Instead, they ask, "What's my job?" and go about figuring out the best, fastest way to complete that task. Then they consider themselves done. This is a key differentiator between your employees and yourself, possibly. Management styles need to adapt and get away from the assumption of laziness and replace it with structure around tasks and the work that should be completed after those initial tasks are finished. Set expectations earlier, and there will be mutual accountability for the success around those tasks. Our next myth: millennials don't want to put the hours to get ahead. While baby boomers tend to see time as something to invest, the younger generation view it as valuable currency not to be wasted. This is the generation that demands work-life balance and paid time off. They want to get the job done. Then they want to put behind them and enjoy life. Boomer managers have a tendency to lose the interest of their millennial employees by looking too far into the future. Millennials live in a time frame based on right now. Their world has proven that nothing is a guaranteed. From nationwide layoffs, to war, to soaring divorce rates, they've decided there's not a lot you can count on. As a result, they're not interested in promotion plans 5 years from now. They don't even want to know what will happen at the end of the summer. Life is uncertain. To reach the millennial employee and reduce turnover, make it certain. Tell your employees that you have a plan. Take pains to ensure it is in a time frame short enough for them to envision. This approach feeds into the reality while simultaneously building trust and buying you more time. Reward small successes along the way. String these milestones together, and you will soon realize long tenures among your staff. Our next myth: millennial employees have no respect for authority. In reality, they have great respect for leaders and loyalty. They just don't respect authority just because. Loyalty and respect must be earned. But when it's earned, it's given fiercely. In fact, loyalty to the individual leaders and the boss is the #1 reason millennial employees stay in a job, especially in the first 3 tenuous years. But dissatisfaction with a supervisor is the #1 reason a millennial will quit. So in order to increase retention, managers must take a flipped view on leadership. It is no longer enough to hire the right people and show them the way. You now must be the right person to win their affection. It sounds a little touchy-feely for the workforce, but the more quickly leaders understand this new relationship, the faster you will see the rewards of employee retention. The next myth, they don't want to grow up. The millennial employees really don't know how to grow up. The youngest generations in today's workforces are faced with delayed adulthood and just generally facing the real world later. Now, this isn't a result of a mutated maturity gene. It's just what it is. And if you were being completely honest about this situation, boomers had a lot to do why it's happening. As parents, boomers had a tendency to coddle their children and use their own good fortune to make sure that their children were taken care of. Millennials today look at the corporate ladder and think there must be another way after watching their parents work long hours and pay their dues. If we look back at our Time magazine covers, this myth might be probably aligned to more of youth and not the overall stereotype of the generation. Remember back in the day, how excited were you actually to start that first job? Here are some key traits to remember as you create an environment to develop and retain millennials. The generation thrives for connections and experiences. So give them opportunities to engage with other workers and hold events or create communication channels where they can share ideas. In the workplace, millennials want the opportunity to work on new projects, participate on sustainability task force, and have direct interactions with leaders. The characteristics of challenging the way things have always been done and to make jobs more efficient can be a huge part of the continuous improvement of a company. Finally, millennials are eager to display their talents and skills and show how their work fits into the bigger picture of the company's successes. Now let's look at some additional work expectations of the millennials. Based on the Tooling U-SME survey, the expectation around career advancement opportunity is very evident, as 72% of millennials say that their ideal job should have an opportunity for career advancement. In addition, another 72% say that their ideal job should allow them to learn new skills. Companies can build high performers and engage millennials by implementing the following best practices. Millennials want to fully understand their role and why it is important to the organization. Through strong onboarding, you can share your company's mission and share initiatives, for instance, related to the community environmental programs, where new team members can be involved. Studies indicate that millennials decide whether they're going to stay long-term for the company on day one. So make sure that you're capturing them on day one and making an immediate connection with them through a strong onboarding program. Here's a few tips when building out your onboarding program. First, tactful timing. Send a pre-first day email or text to the new millennial hire that highlights the organization's excitement and what they expect when it comes to attire, parking, and the day's agenda. Since employee energy levels are typically higher later in the week, consider starting the new hire on a Wednesday as opposed to that Monday session. Wednesdays, Thursdays, or even Friday. Start the new hire's day after 10 a.m. This allows ample time for the new hire to find their way to work and the current employees to address urgent items before the new hire actually arrives. The second tip, engage existing employees. So ask your current employees who've been working in the organization for less than 2 years what they wish they were told or did during the onboarding process and integrate that into the system. With existing employees, stress the importance of a warm welcome to the new hires and set up time for the new hire to connect with at least one company leader. And the third tip, give gear. Nothing communicates with, we forgot you were starting today, than not having new hire gear ready. Surprise them with some super sweet company branded swag. The quirkier and the more unique is the better. This can help new hire begin identifying with the company on day one. The next piece, create clear training plans and career pathways. Millennials want and need to see clear training plans and career pathways. Tribal knowledge through informal passing along of information by more senior employees is not an effective method of training millennials or anyone for that matter. This group desires documented expectations and plans to help them reach those expectations and beyond. It is important to create and administer a formal training program tied to competency development and career growth and communicate that this exists. Training should leverage short bursts of different learning methodologies to teach new information and then apply it to the job as soon as possible. Use methods like micro-credentialing or badging to bring shorter successes to your millennials. And always bring technology into the process when possible, which is a big comfort zone for the millennials. To better standardize the development of millennials, Tooling U-SME is a strong advocate of a worker qualification model. This model holds both the learner and the company accountable for knowledge and skills application. For each job within the organization, a tailored standardized development plan is created that involves any knowledge and critical skills taught to the learner prior to releasing them to their on-the-job training experience. The OJT experience is then standardized through what is taught and what is emphasized to the learner. This also includes verifying that your OJT instructors are quality instructors when it comes to working with millennials and delivering on-the-job training through best practice methodology. Finally, hands-on demonstration of skills of the job would be a capstone of learning through what is called a job qualification standard evaluation. This system of accountability clearly shows the requirements of the job and the methodology around the attainment of that job competency. Clear expectations of the job and a clear pathway to get there is in direct alignment with millennial needs. Millennials want to continually learn and develop at all stages of their career and expect manufacturers to offer resources to do so. There should be an emphasis on cross-training and succession planning, so it is in the manufacturer's best interest to integrate ongoing training programs to continually develop the millennial workforce. In addition, it is critical to bridge generational gaps by introducing formal mentoring programs that will build long-term relationships on both business and personal levels. Engagement studies often declare a reason for employees leaving is tied to unhappiness with direct supervisors and how they were trained for their job. Those responsible for training millennials must have the skills to develop and nurture them, and is critical to developing a new manufacturing workforce. Trainers must apply best practices in delivering on-the-job training and show the patience of teaching a new type of worker that will ultimately replace them in the workplace. Having strong teachers in manufacturing is a final crucial piece in building a strong learning culture and retaining the workforce you have invested in training. For those millennials going through formal classroom education, consider the flipped classroom approach to learning that directly applies to millennial needs. Before the class, students prepare to participate in class activities through online sessions for self-paced e-learning. In class, the students then practice applying key concepts learned during those online sessions and get feedback from instructors. After the class, students check their understanding through online assessments and extend their learning through additional research and community-based learning. So those are the key topics we wanted to cover today. As a takeaway, we want to highlight the best practices in learning development that align to millennial needs, which include providing strong onboarding on day one, building clear training plans and career pathways, implementing succession and mentoring programs, and developing strong organizational trainers to take on the training responsibilities of the millennials. In conclusion, on this slide, we've combined some final tips for working with millennials. Don't generalize the generation. Again, we talked about how this is more of a youth thing than it is a generational thing. So break down those stereotypes, break down the walls, and embrace this work group. Communicate your corporate mission. Show them their future through strong career pathways. Provide continual learning opportunities. Go digital and bring technology in whenever possible. Allow them to share their ideas through all levels of the organization, and always provide regular and immediate feedback when possible. Ultimately, by better understanding and embracing the strengths of the millennials, manufacturers can build high performers, providing exciting career opportunities and boost productivity through the entire organization. With their fresh eyes and thinking, millennials can be an asset to companies looking for competitive advantages in years to come. We want to thank everyone for joining us. We are going to open up the floor to questions in a moment here. But as always, you can find additional information on the MSC Better MRO site and also on the Tooling U-SME site as well. You'll be able to download a white paper from the Tooling U-SME site that has a lot of this great information around millennials. So make sure you check those out. We do have a few questions that come in. We're only going to have time to take probably about 3 of these questions. But as we do with these other webinars that we've done in the past, we are recording all of your questions. So if we don't get to answer them in this session here, we will reach back out with your answers in the very near future. So let's take the first question. It is, how can I get my generations to work together? Okay, so it sounds like we have some challenges in kind of breaking down those walls. Personally, I'm a firm believer in creating cross-generational work groups. So if it is a lean or a continuous improvement project that's needed for the organization, make sure that you have members from each generation as part of that team. Strengths will rise and respect will gradually be earned and developed as those teams work together and contribute towards a common goal. It really brings out the strengths of a younger generation and how that melds well with the experience of the older generation as well. So cross-generational work groups, always a very strong way to get everyone to kind of work together and start breaking down some of those barriers. Question number 2, you talked about mentors. What is the difference between a mentor and a trainer? This is a great question, ones that I hear a lot when we're we're talking through kind of the trainer versus mentor discussions. Trainers focus more on skill development at a task or a more narrow perspective, while mentors are based on more relationships, personal development, and the broader perspective of the individual, not only in company but in life. A trainer can be part of more of a person's experience for a short-term period, where they're learning a particular task or a standard operating procedure or something along those lines, while a mentor can be a lifelong partner, providing guidance and sharing their experience indefinitely. They're there to provide career and life growth guidance to the mentee. Many mentors in organizations don't even work in the same department as those individuals. So don't feel that you have to combine your trainers and mentors. You could have a mentor in the engineering group, mentoring an individual in the production group. So don't have to think that it has to come within the department itself. I think we have time for one last question before we wrap things up. What do you think is the largest hurdle with millennials in the manufacturing sector? Well, honestly, I think it's the hours. It's really hard for a young person to enter the working world and follow the shift scheduling of manufacturing. It is difficult, maybe because it is a first job, maybe because it is a hard job and not having those skills, it's not easily adaptable. But just throwing this out there, but maybe it is a time where manufacturing can get a little more creative for those individuals who need those more flexible schedules. If the characteristics are correct and money is not necessarily an objective of the younger generation and the millennials, can we hire more workers for less pay and give them shorter shifts? And make it more flexible where you can bring individuals in for shorter shifts. So that's just some food for thought, but the long structured hours of shift work may be the largest struggle for those just entering the workplace that I have seen across the country. Well, that is about time. We're right at our half hour. So we would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And please check out the Better MRO site and the Tool U-SME website as well for more information on the millennials and some great additional information on workforce development and education. Thank you all today for taking the time out, and we look forward to our next session. Have a